G'day everyone, Gilbert. Sometimes my stage name is Gilbo. I made that stage name because some of the fantastical things that I do and talk about are a bit much for a normal person like Gilbert. So I've created Gilbo so I can do all sorts of fantastical things and just pin it all on that alter ego. So today I want to talk about the Great Riddle, my introduction to an incredible piece of work that I've subsequently been looking at for I think about 8.5 years now, and some of its implications, some of its applications. Truly a great piece of work, and called the Great Riddle. So I expect this will be a fairly lengthy video. So tell the story of its origins first. So going back 2016, I'd finished a pair of degrees, economics and political science, and I needed a job, and it was well past time. So I had the polar method, the wheels of time, already well established, and I'd been doing my best to apply that to fields of ethics and politics. And so at that time, 2016, I announced myself as a prophet and launched a campaign for the inaugural world presidency. So it was, I suppose it was an interesting few weeks. I was out on the street a few times with my mini stall and talking about it on the internet a bit. I guess people assumed I was a bit of a nut, but anyway, I was confident that I was going to be able to push through that, and everything was on track. But it was just a few weeks into that. I'd summarised that in the Confucio Multi-Dorm Hyper-Fantastico, my common framework for ethics and religion and global political program, written as a 20-line poem. Summarised that and launched the campaign. But then just a few weeks later, I had the second major vision of my life, and that's put me straight back into study mode, and from which I've been emerging over the last year or so, and with a new element to my campaign. So yes, this Great Riddle is spiritual science. It also looks at a fundamental physics, and a key to it is that it provides a method of interpreting many significant ancient texts. So, for example, some of the work of Moses with the temple design, for example. There's the Sefer Yetzirah, often attributed in that brief text itself to Abraham. There's the work out of ancient Mesopotamia with the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Atrahasis. There's some of Plato's work. We're also looking at a big crossover. These are some of my references over here. Looking at a big crossover from to the Eastern tradition with yin-yang polarity and the I Ching here, the Book of Changes, looking at fundamental polar conditions and how they interact, making a set of 64 patterns. So I want to look at some maths, and I want to look at some bit of music theory, a bit of geometry, some discoveries I've made in math, but I'll make another video about the detail of that. Mostly I want to look at the framework for understanding the spiritual science and the fundamental physics with reference to some of those ancient texts. So I'll tell the story of it. I was playing drums. I'd been reading the Revelation, the last book of the Bible, And as over the days, I was living out in the bush and near Mount Tamborine there, west of the Gold Coast. And in my tent, I had my drums set up and I was playing drums and I was seeing something. In my mind's eye, it was like a harmonic through the duration of the beat. You get harmonics in pitch, as we'll talk about a bit, but I was seeing like a harmonic in the duration of the beat. And then I was thinking about Revelation as I was reading it. Read it a couple of times. I'd read it before, but read it a couple of times, and I thought, it's a big number riddle. The thing's a big number riddle. There's numerous references to various numbers and shapes. And I thought, well, if it is a number riddle, the first clue has got to be the number 666, the number of the beast, the number of man. Says who has wisdom calculates 666. So I thought, yeah, people call it Satan's number, but yeah, we're looking through the idea that we're talking about some kind of spiritual science here, and that the text should not be taken literally. It's got all sorts of crazy things that are supposed to happen to us during the period of the apocalypse, before this New Jerusalem, this great God's perfected city, big cube, descends onto the earth. Yeah, but before that, the oceans turn to like the blood of a dead man. There's these massive hailstones like a talent. Each one weighs a talent, which is like 100 pounds or something. There's all these massive destruction and death all around. These riders of hell come forth, and 200 million riders from hell come forth with red, blue and yellow on their breastplates, and their horses are breathing fire, smoke and sulphur. Stingers in their snakes in their tails, stinging people. These wild things, and they kill like a third of humankind. So yeah, it's supposed to be awful, but it's not as it seems, because you also have passages like the rider on the white horse, who is whose name is the Word of God, who's clearly some kind of angel Gabriel, I assume. And Gabriel comes forth and defeats all people and asks the birds to come and feed on the flesh of all people. So it's not exactly only the riders of hell that are seeing people die in that fascinating text. It's you've got to read a little bit deeper than what's on the surface. So anyway, I was thinking it's some kind of number and geometry riddle, some kind of thing. There's like 7 trumpets get blown and all these terrible things happen. 7 bowls of wrath get poured out. There's 7 angels of 7 spirits of God. There's this. We go through these various processes, and subsequently, yes. So it says. Anyway, it says that there's this scroll in the hand of God, and the Messiah comes. It's the story of the Messiah, and so the long prophesied Messiah comes and takes the scroll from the hand of God. It's got 7 seals on it, and then subsequently unlocks these 7 seals, and we have the period of the apocalypse, which is said to be 3.5 years. And then we have the advent of the New Jerusalem, with the God comes and rules over people directly. The returned Messiah lives for 1,000 years and rules with the 144,000 people who've got the name of God written on their forehead. So yeah, it's apparently both a difficult time and a good time when the Messiah comes, and. Yeah, so we're trying to decode some of these bizarre passages, and yeah, like I said, one of them is that there's a beast. The beast takes the power of Satan, Satan gives the beast his power. Satan is described as a seven-headed dragon, and Satan gives the beast his power and authority to rule, and the beast comes, and the beast's got a friend called the false prophet. So the beast and the false prophet are both in chapter 13, and they and then at the end of that chapter it says, who has wisdom, calculate 666. This is the number of the beast, it is the number of man. So anyway, I'd been seeing this harmonic in my mind and know some minimal amount of music theory. When you break the waveform, say like the guitar string, if you break it in half, you get the octave. So you get the root note, and then the octave is the first sub-frequency within any note. The octave which is at the half point, that's the most resonant frequency of any note. And then the next most important one is when you divide the wavelength or the string in 3, and then you get the major fifth. So do, re, mi, fa, so, do, so, do, so. And you get this, these are the most significant sub-frequencies in any note. And the next one, when you divide the wavelength into 5 parts, then you get the major third. Do, re, mi, do, mi, so, mi, do. That's the do, mi, so. Those are the notes in a major chord. So you get this division by 5, division by 3, and division by 2, and you get the major sub-frequencies of any note. So starting out with the half and the third as the starting point, then I thought maybe 666 is 2/3, but as a waveform. And then I drew the picture. I drew the 2/3 waveform. Where is it? I've got a picture of it here. This is a little book that I wrote about this Great Riddle. Where are we? Here we are. 666 is the 2/3 waveform. That's simple stuff. That in the middle there, that's the octave, and this is the major fifth here. I'll show you on the guitar. Yeah, see we got the half wave, dividing the length in half, half back again, half, octave, octave, and then this is major fifth, like that. So we can call this a horn, we can call this an eye, so that the text is talking a lot about horns and eyes. So we're going to assume that a horn is an octave and an eye is made of major fifth. So this, when we divide the length in half, so this is the note we're talking about, in this case a D. So we divide it in half, we get another D, but that's the octave, dong dong. But if we just touch it, we're just going to touch it here, we get a harmonic. And it was Pythagoras gave us the law of the octave, I believe, at least in that Greek tradition. And he told us that when you double the frequency, when you halve the wavelength, so we're halving the length of the wave, in this case the guitar string, we're halving the length of the wave, it doubles the frequency of the vibration, and you get the octave. So you can go on and on and on with that. Anytime you double to infinity or halve to infinity, infinitesimal, then you get the octave. So this one is at the halfway, and then just with the harmonic again, we get another octave at the quarter, and then we get another octave at the eighth. Where is it? Sorry. Not getting it very well. There it is. So that's 1 octave up. That's 2 octaves up. That's 3 octaves up at the eighths. So at the quarters you get another octave, and at the eighths, so 1/8, 3/8, 5/8 and 7/8, you get the 3rd octave up. And then at the divide the length by 3, that's the major fifth. 1, 2, 2, 2. Sorry, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You get the major fifth, and then you also get that on the harmonic, where we've divided the string into thirds. And then you also get it on the fifth. We'll talk about that more later. They're not on the frets, but like this one's a fifth. And that is the 3rd note in the D major scale. Maybe an octave or 2 up, or definitely an octave or 2 up. But anyway, so that's the lens we're looking at, and what we're trying to build is some kind of a fundamental physics based on the behaviour of waves. So it's not just musical waves. We can look at the way that light behaves, or the way that any waveform, the waves in the ocean, any waveform has that same harmonic structure to it, built on this harmonic structure. So with the story we're telling here, there was the image in my mind of this 2/3 waveform. I'd thought of it years before, but it didn't make any sense to me. It was just a novelty idea. But then I thought of it. I drew the waveform. I went to sleep, and first time in my life I thought, and I said like a prayer to Jesus. Maybe I've thought about it before, but I've never been one really to pray to Jesus. But I prayed to Jesus and drew the picture and went to sleep. Massive visions through the night. First night there was I could see like a pathway, a golden pathway, and just like a shining in my mind, and beautiful musical waves flowing back and forth through my body, like it went on all night. Very beautiful. And then the next night it was the face of Jesus like this. Like I was sort of conscious but sleeping again, just went on for hours. Jesus' face in front of me like that. So I thought, well, that's fascinating. There was a kick in the guts in a way. It was deeply shocking, and just the idea that, like I said, I'd already announced myself as a prophet and launched a campaign for the world presidency, and clearly the implication was with this was that I was supposed to be the Messiah as well. So the idea remains profoundly ridiculous. So and deeply shocking. And but I could see something that I found incredibly fascinating and that I needed to understand. So I went back into study mode. I'd been at uni for 5 years and finished that, and I'd been working on the Wheels of Time for all those years and finished that, and the application to politics, etc. So then it's I'm supposed to be the Messiah as well. So it's a strange idea. So then, the Revelation talks about the coming of the Messiah. So it says that the scroll is written on the front and the back. The scroll coming from the hand of God. The Messiah comes and takes the scroll from the hand of God. It's sealed with 7 seals, and it's written on the front and the back. So on one side of this scroll, we'd be talking about the coming of the Messiah and the ushering in of the great global peace, the one religion for all people, the great global human society, the advent of a global human society, the end of prehistory, Judgment Day, this great change within the society, the coming of this thing called the New Jerusalem. And on the other side of the scroll is this thing called the Great Riddle, that I call the Great Riddle, which has been repeatedly referred to by incredible authors. So there's the Revelation itself, which has got this incredible number riddle, but there's been plenty more. So going back as far as I know, there was the Mesopotamians, and there was this fellow called Utnapishtim, or Atrahasis. He was also called Ziusudra. And then Moses came along and changed his name to Noah. So back in the day, we had these incredible texts, the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Atrahasis, especially. There's the Enuma Elish, but I've only glanced at that. But the Atrahasis, a central theme of the Atrahasis is when the Anunnaki gods of the day, one of them, Enki, comes along and instructs Atrahasis how to build an ark, a boat. And then there's all these periods of destruction, and then there's finally going to be this great flood, and instructs Atrahasis how to build an ark. And the Epic of Gilgamesh also deals with that same content and a number of other issues that also contain many references to the type of thing we're looking at, these numerical references to this thing we're calling the Great Riddle. So Atrahasis' ark is a 120, it's 120, an edge equals 120 cubit cube. So we can look at the spherical elements to the design. There's one fellow recently discovered a missing tablet and suggested that the design is for a giant coracle, which is a bowl structure that says roofed like the Apsu. The Apsu is like the underground aquifer that is big in that understanding of how the world works, and presumably that's some kind of dome structure. So there are references to spherical structures to that ark, but it's clearly built with this laid out like a square is the beginning of the how to build this thing. And 120, you map it out like a square, same height. So we're going to be looking a bit more at that, because the 120, we're building this in base 60 maths. So there's a 120 cube, and then inside the 120 cube there's the 60 by 60, edge equals 60 cube. Then inside that we can look at an edge equals 30 cube. Base 60 maths. So what we're saying here is that the ark is not really designed to hold animals. What it's designed for is to float an idea. And it's already had a massive influence on our contemporary society. Base 60 maths is the foundation of our measurements of time, with 60 seconds and 60 minutes. And there's the 12-hour, the 24-hour, that's also come out of the base 60 maths, because the 5 and the 12 are related to one another in the base 60. And then also there's the rod, the 12 cubit rod. So you get the 12 months at 30 days each, makes what we can call the normalized year of 360 days. You get 360 degrees in a circle. So for example, if you're drawing a hexagon, what is a hexagon? I might look in through this one. So I've been drawing some geometry in this little book too. The hexagon here. So if we're looking now at a cube here, this one equals, edge equals 60 around here, then that's 60, 60, 60, 60. So that's 360 around the circle, which is where 360 degrees comes from. So we can see this huge influence of base 60 maths in our contemporary society, but the real usefulness of it has been largely forgotten. And what we're going to say is that applied to physics, the numbers actually has the actual physics. So that when we divide the string by 2, then we divide the string by 3, then we need the number 6 to house the waveform. If we're going to divide it on even numbers, then it divides in half at the 3 and divides in thirds at the 2 and the 4. And then if we wanted to also divide the string by 5, then we end up with the number 30. But that's just like the inner part of the thing. We're getting to another part of another essential element of describing this great riddle, and that's with the idea of the 3.5 years of the apocalypse. So that's mentioned in Daniel, who's a prophet from around 600 years before Jesus. And Daniel mentioned the coming of the Messiah and the 3.5 year period of the apocalypse, and then Revelation expands on that quite dramatically. It uses what we call the normalized year before, 360 days to a year, and 12 months of 30 days each. And so 3.5 years is 42 months, is 1,260 days. So this is the period of the apocalypse, 3.5 years. So what we're going to say is this. This is my the key component of what we're going to be looking at today. 3 nested cubes. And the 3 nested cubes are equal to the edge equals 30, 60, and 120. But not only 30, 60, and 120, we can measure them in lots of different ways. So this one equals, so they call time, times, and half a time, 3.5 years. So that's time, so we are calling it 60, but now we're calling it 1. It's equal to time. And then this one's equal to 2, and this one's equal to half. Time, times, and half a time. But the Revelation doesn't use these numbers. Revelation uses 6, 12, and 24. So we're going to forget about the 5th for now, dividing by 5. We're going to just focus on dividing by 2 and dividing by 3, where we get the 666. So this is where it started for me. I built this shape very quickly after thinking, 666 must be the answer as a 2/3 waveform. Then, like the very next day, I thought, what if that's the answer, then what else is there in the text that supports that idea? And I hit immediate pay dirt. I thought, it's talking about wisdom. So then I thought, who's wise? So then we got Revelation 4 is deeply parallel to Ezekiel 1, which is influential in the history of Kabbalah. But Revelation 4 talks about the structure of the Godhead, and it says that, more than that, but it says that surrounding the holy throne, there's 24 elders. So I thought, those elders must be pretty wise. So then I thought about the number 24, divided it with halves and thirds, I get this shape. divides on, like I showed you on the guitar, in halves, half, quarters and eighths with octaves, and then each one is surrounded by an eye made of the major fifth notes when we divide the string into thirds, sixths and twelfths. So we get this 7 octave harmonics, and this number 7 has been referred to so many times it's absolutely ridiculous. We have the 7 days of the week we have coming out of, it's built into that whole structure. So we've had, in the Epic of Gilgamesh again, we've got, for example, Humbaba, who is parallel to Satan in Revelation. Humbaba is a monster that guards the Lebanon cedar forest, and Gilgamesh goes and kills Humbaba with his mate Enkidu. And Humbaba is guarded by 7 auras. And the walls of Uruk, the city that Gilgamesh built, Abraham came from the city just down the road, just a couple of generations later. We'll look at that Sefer Yetzirah. But yes, so this idea of the 7, there's Moses' second most holy object in Moses' temple, the lampstand with 3 paired branches and the central branch, the menorah, the second most holy object in Moses' temple, looking at 7 lamps. So Revelation refers to these 7 lamps, along with 7 bowls of wrath, 7 trumpets blown by these angels, etc. And so then these 3 nested cubes, come a little bit closer. The 3 nested cubes here, we got the 24, and here we've got 12, and here we got 6. So it says in the Revelation 4, not only about the 24 elders that surround the holy throne, it says that there is also 4 living creatures before the throne, again parallel to Ezekiel. But these 4 living creatures, I've marked them on here. So this 12 divides here to give 3 octave harmonics on the 6, on the 3. These are on the quarters on the string. So and then in here we got 1 octave harmonic. This one's worth 6, divides in the thirds. So we end up with this structure here where we've got the 7 spirits of God up here, each of them on one of the octaves. We got, and 4 living creatures before the holy throne, and down below 7 heads of Satan, and then Babylon, the world of sin and delusion, is sitting on top of the 7-headed dragon. That's what it says. So yeah. So we're talking still the 6, the 12 and the 24, right? So the 24 and the 6 are both mentioned in each of it. Says each of the living creatures has 6 wings. So this one you divide it in half and in thirds. This one you divide, it's just smaller, divides in halves and thirds, and this one divides in halves and thirds. Each of these living creatures has 6 wings, and these 7 spirits of God up here, we'll look at names for them all. We can look at names and plot them from the text. But this 12 here, the significance of the 12 is hard to understate once again. The repeated references to it. So Jesus had 12 apostles. There was the 12 tribes of Israel is a classic. So, and again, we're looking back through the Mesopotamian literature, where instead of a 12 we got 120, but we've got the 12 rods, and we've got the relationship between the 5 and the 12, with the 60. And the relationship between the 5 and the 12, again, we see it so obviously, and you see the pentagon here, this is an icosahedron. See the pentagon here, and then we've got 12 vertices, 6 polar axes running through the icosahedron, and same on the dodecahedron. You see the relationship with the 12 faces and the 12 pentagonal faces. It's built into the, like I was saying, the numbers are built into the structure of the physics, not just in music, but in geometric form, also in number theory. I'm still just talking about this, so forgive me if I repeat myself or lose track a bit. Hopefully I cover everything. So yeah, we're talking about this 12 here, and one reference we've got to it is in the Revelation 21, I believe. It talks about the coming of the New Jerusalem. So the New Jerusalem is described as 12,000 stadia along one side, 12,000 stadia on that side, and just as high as it is long and wide. So it's a edge equals 12,000 cube. You can have a bit of a funny look on the internet at what a 12,000 stadia cube descended onto the Earth looks like. It's pretty massive. And again, I think we're not exactly talking about a cube, but an actual cube, but an idea. And it says that this cube here, this 12 by edge equals 12 cube, is it's got 3 gates on either side, each of them constructed of a pearl, and each of these gates has got one. 4 by 3 is 12 crystals. Each of them's got a crystal underneath it. And we'll get back to a bit of colour theory as well. But these 12 crystals are also parallel to something that Moses said in relation to his temple, where the high priest has got 12 crystals, different coloured crystals on the breastplate. And so we've got these, this is the frame that we're looking at here. 3.5 years of apocalypse is 3 nested cubes, 6, 12 and 24. And then what the Mesopotamians have done, they've multiplied it all by 5, as is only reasonable, and so they're equal to 30, 60 and 120. And we've also said they're equal to half, 1 and 2, making 3.5 years of the apocalypse, etc. So, what are we going to look at next? We could say that, I said I'd have a look at these, the names of them, so let's do that. These 7 spirits of God here we're talking about. So, so there's a thing with the structure of our consciousness is kind of mapped onto this thing. So it's a system not only of physics, and we're going to talk about that. So we looked at 6 polar axes in the icosahedron a moment ago. If you have 3 polar spatial axes, you've got front, back, left, right, up, down. They're mentioned in the Sefer Yetzirah, which claims to be the work of Abraham. And then he says that there is 32 pathways of occult wisdom, for example. And we also hear that there are... So what the Sefer Yetzirah does, it looks at the structure of the Hebrew alphabet and parallels that with the structure of a geometric cosmology. So there's 3 mother letters, and those 3 mother letters are described as effectively yin, yang, and the great tongue of balance between them. So there's a key theme for us here. We're talking about polarity and balance. These three mother letters, first there's the one, the God, but God is then put in the middle of a cube, and we got six fundamental directions, six primary directions as three polar axes in space. So then we can think that these three makes 8 spaces. So here we got front, right, up, front, left, up, back, right, up, back, left, up, and 4 down below. So we end up with eight spaces in an essentially cubic frame. And then we go on to say, he then gives us 12, so there's 3 mother letters, 7 double letters associated with these, 1 for God, and 6 in these primary directions, and then 12 ordinary letters. And these 12 he puts on the edges of the cube. So look, I built one here. This thing is called a cube octahedron. It's a fascinating shape because from the center to any of the 12 vertices, the distance, assuming that, let's say that they're all equal to root 2, because what we're going to say is it used to be a cube and we've sheared off the corners. So this is the center of the edge of this cube here. So if the cube came out to, it looks like my fingers are touching these corners, but they're actually come out towards you to what would be the corners of a cube. And we shear off the corner. So here we're touching the edge of the corner. So if the cube is equal to, the cube edge is equal to 2, so we go one out to the centers of the faces, then the distance from the center of the face to any of the points is equal to the square root of 2, which is 1.414. But the beauty of this is, see, we're going on the edge of here from the corner to the, from the center of this cube edge to the center of this cube edge. This is all equal to root 2 as well. So Buckminster Fuller called this one the vector equilibrium, because all of the lines you can draw joining the dots, they're all equal to, they all are equal to one another. So it's a foundational structure in existence. The cube octahedron is an important structure. And Abraham described it quite clearly for us going back about 4,000 years. When he, and with these 12 vertices, what we have, again, 12 polar axes. So we're going to look in detail at some geometry in a different video, but I'll show you those. I'll show them now while I'm thinking about it. I've got them in this book here as well. So we're looking at a fundamental geometry where we're building geometric space by the addition of polar axes. So if you start with one polar axis, you've got a line. Then you've got 2 polar axes. You've got a tetrahedron, which is a triangle-based pyramid. So I just drew it here with these circles. So this is looking from above. So this is the peak at the top, and then there's, so each of the edges is triangular face, and it's got a triangle base on the pyramid. So, and we can look at colour theory in this as well. So with once you start getting 2 polar axes where you've got a pair of you got 4 vertices, then if you're looking at a first split, you can look at the light. First you've got the light, and the light goes to the first place where the light lands, the first resting place of the light. So you go white goes to yellow. So then these ones will split again, the second polar axis. Then you'll end up with red and blue, and they'll be in this sort of relationship with one another. So it also looks like a square. If we tip this is actually the view of a tetrahedron from the side, because this is the edge of the tetrahedron. And then, so because the tetrahedron fits inside a cube, right? I'll show you on this other thing. Yeah. God knows what that is. So this yellow one here touches the corners of the opposite corners of one another. So we're looking at a fundamental geometry here where we're building the 5 platonic solids and the cube octahedron, and the line makes 7 shapes. So we're going to get there through the addition of polar axes. And the beauty of it as well, so we've got the tetrahedron, looks like a triangle, then we tip it over. So then we're seeing the base of one triangle here, and so if we got a cube, then the edge of the tetrahedron runs diagonally across the face of the cube, and there's 6 edges and 6 faces of the cube. So the tetrahedron runs across the faces, and so we can say there's a primary tetrahedron. The cube grows out of it, but we can describe a specific size for it. And if we think about the expanding out, we get a line, and then we get a tetrahedron, and the tetrahedron will be the square root of 3 to the vertices, which will make the length of the edge the square root of 2, which is, or 2 times the square root of 2, which is the diagonal across the cube, which is edge equals 2. So we've got a radius of 1, we have the emanation of the light, then we've sort of the first polar axis, and then we split again and we get 3 primary colours, red, yellow and blue. Just like we got 3 mother letters, we got 1 goes to 3, we got 3 mother letters in Abraham's work of the Sefer Yetzirah. Then we've got a lot of talk in Revelation as well about the 3 primary colours, because the 200 million riders from hell have got red, yellow and blue on their breastplate, and these are then referred to several times, and there's the fiery lake of hell, which is described as sulphur, smoke and fire. Yellow, blue for smoke, red for fire. The 3 primary colours, and white. And then what happens is then we get on the edges of the tetrahedron, the centre of each of the edges, there's 6 edges, and each of these tetrahedron edges runs diagonally across the face of the cube. So if we're the next one, when we get 3 polar axes, we've described the shape of an octahedron. So we got 6 vertices, and each of those vertices will be touching the face of a cube in the 3 paired primary directions. So we got 1 axis goes to 2 axes, goes to 3 axes, and then we got the 6 rainbow colours. Between white and yellow, we got light yellow. Between yellow and blue, we got green. We end up with 6 rainbow colours. Just like there's those 6 directions, and white makes 7. So running and returning, as the Sefer Yetzirah suggests, you get this, the white becomes like a perspective point, the house of the consciousness. And sometimes it's central, sometimes it's on the frame. And then after we got 4 polar axes, we get the cube, and then 5 polar axes. Actually, we end up with 10 polar axes through the dodecahedron. We can look at reasons for why there's all of a sudden 10, but then we're back to 6 polar axes through the 12 vertices of the icosahedron. So what we're looking at with that, in this fundamental physics we're looking at here, we got a spark, form, and a field. So we're building the fundamental geometry which houses 6 dimensions. So we're talking 3 spatial dimensions, then we're talking time, then we're talking growth and decay, then we're talking heaven over earth, consciousness over the form. So we're trying to build a fundamental physics out of 6 polar axes that houses waveforms that break via measurable behaviors. So again, we got the 3 primary colours, we got 6 rainbow colours, and then we got 12 crystal colours. So that's the direct parallel to those 22 letters of the Sefer Yetzirah. We can look at 3 primary, 6 rainbow with God, then 12 crystal colours gives us 22. Those 12 crystals, like I said, some very significant mentions of them. So those would be pastel colours and easily given names. Some of them, they will be between red and orange, for example. There'll be like deep orange or whatever you want to call it. That will be one of the colours of the crystals, halfway between red and orange, halfway between yellow and green, halfway between blue and purple. So we got this frame, this geometric frame. So they're looking at that formation of that frame. I suggested that we're looking at 7 shapes through the addition of these polar axes. So we got line, we got tetrahedron, we got octahedron, then we got the cube, the dodecahedron, the icosahedron, and then we got the back to the cube octahedron. We're looking at the creation of existence. And so through this creation process in Moses, again in the Torah, the opening passages of the Bible talks about 7 days of creation. So here we're looking at the process of the addition of 6 polar axes resting on the 7th day. So there's a geometry to it. And what I was getting onto next, as you can hear, I'm talking around these subjects, hopefully not missing too much. We're looking at how 3 polar axes makes 8 spaces. Then what we find is that 6 polar axes makes 64 spaces. And 64 keeps coming up for us. So we find that the Yi Ching here, the Book of Changes, that looks at 3 fundamental polarities. In the Wheels of Time, another video which is the polar analytical method that I started developing in my teen years, it looks at 3 fundamental polarities being yin-yang, heaven-earth, and separate connected. So if we can look at these as processes involving interaction, 3 spatial dimensions and then 3 interactive dimensions, then we end up with 64 conditions. We get the sort of a fundamental, I'm connected, yang and heaven, and then this other thing that I'm interacting with is separate yin and earth. And then we find that these 8 on 8 makes these 64 patterns. So, and you also find that 64 is in this frame here. And so subsequently we have these interesting mentions from Abraham about the 64, whereby there's 32 pathways of occult wisdom. There we're up to five, but then he clearly shows us 6 polar axes with the cube octahedron. And in this frame, if this one is equal to 1 from here to here, to where we got this one at 12, or it could also be 60 depending on how we're measuring it, this space here is equal to 1. Now we're saying this is equal to 2. Then this space here is equal to 2. And then so if you got a 4 by 4 square, you get 16. And you multiply it by 4 again for the height, length by breadth by height, gives us 64 cubic spaces. And each of those cubic spaces will be 1 by 1 inside this house. And on these, where these 64 divide, we get these octave harmonics. This one divides into 8 spaces. With these divides, this one is just 1 space, but it's got an octave harmonic on it too. So, we're still talking about a few things. We talked about, so it's the Great Riddle. Try and make a bit of sense of what we're talking about here. We started with, the Mesopotamians and the Ziusudra Utnapishtim Atrahasis Noah and his incredible ark. So just as a for me, what makes sense with that is that what we had about going back about 12,000 years ago, the ocean level was actually substantially lower than it is now. And from about 20,000 years ago to about 7,000 years ago, the ocean rose about 120 metres. And so if we go back a few thousand, not many thousands of years, and considering some of this literature is getting close to 5,000 years old, what we're finding is that there was the centre of this, what became Mesopotamia with Babylon and Sumeria and those other places in there, Nineveh after a while. They became, there was a great civilization, and there's also the Indus Valley in what's Pakistan now. But there was the, what's now underwater in the Persian Gulf was not underwater going back not many thousands of years ago. So there's this idea that the ocean's rising has risen and buried this civilization, and this constantly having to evolve to meet this rising ocean, this society has been stressed out and has suffered a major collapse, and then has been rebuilt by people like Gilgamesh with wisdom that has been thrown into the future by this incredible guy, Utnapishtim. So there was the Mesopotamians, and then after that there was Abraham. So in the Gilgamesh epic and the Atrahasis, what we have is like a number riddle. It's like, if you can understand this, do it. Understand it, how to make it make sense. You have to know some pretty cool things to be able to make the text make sense. And so, Abraham gave us the Sefer Yetzirah with the foundation of the Hebrew language. So Gilgamesh in the Bible is known as Nimrod, the great hunter. He, as of Gilgamesh himself, he was indeed a great hunter. And it talks about how he raised up the cities of the Chaldeans or the Babylonians, and there we have the Tower of Babel. We have the coming of language. People all spoke the same language, and then so we can look at it esoterically and suggest that then after we had the advent of alphabet and the coming of Abraham. Then we had this, people went their own way and divided into all these different communities. The Tower of Babel collapsed. But so we're going back through the history, and there was these characters like Gilgamesh, and there was Utnapishtim, and then Gilgamesh, who went with Enkidu and destroyed Humbaba, also destroyed the Bull of Heaven, which strangely is depicted as a character called Lamassu. And Lamassu is also built with four characters, four living creatures: the human, the eagle, the ox, and the lion. And then we had Ezekiel was living in Babylon. The Jews had been exiled out of Babylon about 600 years before Jesus, and they were exiled out of Jerusalem, and they were living in Babylon. And Ezekiel then used these same four living creatures: the lion, the eagle, the human, and the ox. So we're saying how you map it over the person here. So you can have, like, this is the crown of your head here, and the top of your crown here is sometimes called the guide spot, and this would be your root here at the base of your spine. And then down below here we've got the world of sin and delusion in Babylon. We've got the seven heads of Satan. So then we've got this idea here, where we've got the four living creatures, the human in the heart. Left and right we got the lion and the eagle, and then across our abdomen we've got the ox. So when they're both good, the lion and the eagle, we're strong, and here we're gentle. Then when we're able to balance strong and gentle, then the heart gets purified and the mind rises up, and heaven comes to us, to earth, like that. We've got this concept of polarity and balance built into our psychology, and how we interact with the world, the ethic of the middle way, or the golden mean, with yin, yang, and balance. And then you can also see that structure up across these. I said we get back to naming these seven spirits of God. I'm jumping around a bit. I was coming from Moses, but we're back on Ezekiel and the Revelation as well. But these seven spirits of God. So there's a clear suggestion that these spirits of God can be labelled. And so if we're sitting up on the holy throne, this is the way it's described in Ezekiel and Revelation. There's the holy throne, and then below the holy throne there's like a floor of lapis lazuli or crystal or glass, and that from the holy throne, the vibration pool, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at this vibration pool. Let's imagine we're sitting here on the holy throne, and the vibration pool is nice and clear. As something come in, it doesn't disturb us, we understand it, it goes again, we're not disturbed. But then if something comes to us and we're not sitting up on the holy throne, then we're disturbed. And then we're ignorant, and we're suffering from karma. And that's when we start swimming in the fiery lake of red, yellow and blue. As soon as we're not sitting on the holy throne, then as soon as we don't have God's name written on our forehead, then we're suffering in the fiery lake. These are our two options. We're Purusha, we're God sitting on the holy throne, or we're Prakriti, ignorant of our divinity. And in that state of ignorance, we suffer from pain and karma and attachment. So what we have is, as this pool from sitting on the holy throne, there's the before and the after. And it's coming and it's going. And if we're not disturbed, then the pool is clear. But if we're disturbed, then we're swimming in this lake of pain and karma down below. So of these seven spirits of God, we can label them. One is God. This is, well, let's call it the angel of the message, Gabriel. And then on these two, on the quarters, before and after, stick with the themes that Moses gave us and Jesus has continued. So let's call them Israel and Messiah, the Father and Son of Man. Before and after, they're called the seed and the root and offspring of King David. David was the greatest king of the Jews, and yes, so the root and offspring we're talking about. Israel was the father of the Jewish people, and Jesus, the son of go through this process of becoming and flowing out, before and after. So then these other four spirits of God, 1, 2, 3, 4, we can call them the beast, the false prophet, death, and Hades. So these 7 spirits of God, look, I think I've labelled them somewhere. Here we are, we labelled them. We've got Gabriel, Messiah, and Israel, before and after. And this is us with, this is the wheels of time here. Over there, I've something that this is my polar analytical method, that these my 2 major visions of my life. One gave me the wheels of time, and then this second major vision fits like a glove around the hand of the wheels of time with polarity and balance, and it becomes like the physics that surrounds the psychology as well. So this is in the heart here and in the sex organ root there. And then there are these 4 living creatures here, the lion and the eagle and the ox, just more the human condition here. But then when we bring balance, we ascend up here to God. God comes through us, we sit up on the holy throne. As things come and they go, we're undisturbed. But then if we're disturbed, we sink down here. And there we have the cycle of pain and attachment and karma. And we've got the 7, Earth is we're ruled by Satan, the 7 heads of Satan. But these 4 here, the beast, the false prophet, death, and Hades, the beast and the false prophet, they're in chapter 13. Chapter 13 is divided into 2 clear parts. And chapter 9, death and Hades, again divided into 2 clear parts. So, and takes up the whole chapter. Chapter 10 talks about the angel of the message, Gabriel, comes and one foot on the earth and 1 foot on the sea, and when Gabriel gives the message, time stops. God's plan on earth is fulfilled. That's what it says. And Israel and the Messiah are called these two here. It says there's two olive trees that stand before the Lord, and they are sometimes called the faithful witnesses. In chapter 14, is it? They're the 2 angels who come and harvest the earth. One comes out and harvests the earth, the other comes out and harvests the earth, and then it says that the blood flows out goes to the depth of a horse's bridle. That's right. So it goes to the depth of the horse's bridle and flows out for 1,600 stadia. So again, we had this, the bottom of this square here, if this is 2 by 2, the bottom of it, 4 by 4, 2 by 2, 1 by 1. This 4 by 4, the base of it is 16, and then it flows up to the horse's bridle, so we're halfway up. So we're looking at 4 legs on the horse, and then 2 arms like this, and the head. The seven spirits divided like that, and there's another reference to 4 angels over the earth who have been held back until the day and appointed day and the hour, and then they so here we're talking beast, false prophet, death, and Hades. So the beast is said to come and rule the earth, and who speaks all sorts of blasphemies and defeats the saints, and all round is perhaps because he's said to take the power of Satan. He's described as some bad character, but you've heard a lot of bad things about the that happen in the Revelation, including that God, who's the rider on the white horse, God with the sword that comes from his mouth kills all people. So the beast is actually pretty good compared to God, if you want to read the book literally. But I don't recommend it. It's the stuff of nightmares, extreme nightmares. But so what we're saying is that these 4 angels here over the earth, they're earthly angels, and then these 3 heavenly angels before, after, and throughout. So I am, I was, and I will be, said the Lord. So you get this geometric house, which is also a fundamental physics, which houses a emerging geometric structure. So what else are we talking about? Yeah, we'll go back with Moses. So Moses was around when base 60 maths was still a thing. What happened was about 600 BC, and there's this one terrible bloke, one of the latter so-called prophets, but really just a massive asshole. Was it Nahum? One of them anyway, talking about the desolation of Nineveh, and how Nineveh's skirts were going to be lifted up and she was going to be a showpiece for everyone, and how there's going to be so much blood and destruction is going to be great because God says they should all die. But anyway, one of the things that happened with the subsequent destruction of Nineveh was destroyed, and there was a character called Ashurbanipal, and Ashurbanipal was apparently not a very good guy either, but one thing that he loved to do was to read, and he thought of himself as a great student of the great works, and he kept an incredible library. So something that happened was that with the destruction of Nineveh, Ashurbanipal's library was razed to the ground. All of the papyrus scrolls were burnt, and the other way that the literature was recorded was on stone tablets. They're about the size of a mobile phone, and you'd get this cuneiform text that they were using. And so these soldiers come in and it's like smash, smash, smash. And this incredible literature, about 600 years before Jesus, this incredible literature was lost until we started digging it up again about 150 years ago. So that's still not pieced together. The Epic of Gilgamesh is maybe 2/3 complete, and back to 2/3, the number 666. The number 2/3 is mentioned in Gilgamesh, the Gilgamesh epic, repeatedly. In the extant copy of it, there's at least 3 references to it, including that Gilgamesh is described as 2/3 God and 1/3 man, and the other one is the Ark, this giant cube, is said to sink 2/3 of the way into the water. So we have this repeated references to the number 2/3. And so with this destruction of Ashurbanipal's library, much that was great was lost from the world and has still not been recovered, unfortunately. And some of that is yet to be recovered. It's lying in a jigsaw puzzle mess in the various museums of the world, and some of it still buried. But that is a great project for us to get involved with, is piecing together this literature, which is obviously foundational text for Moses, for example, and for Abraham. So anyway, we were getting on to Moses, and Moses has then taken this information that he's dug out of these Mesopotamian classics and out of Abraham, and has pieced it back together in his own way. So one thing that he did was that with the story of Utnapishtim, he got renamed Noah, and then Noah was built the ark, but Moses describes Noah's ark as being a rectangle 50 by 300. But then if we assume that the sides of the ark are 1 cubit thick, which is a significant assumption, then, and that the windows are at the end, then the floor area of Noah's ark is 14,400, which is 12 squared, or 120 squared, which is the same floor area as Utnapishtim's ark. So that number 144 comes up repeatedly being a 12 by 12 square. And so then Moses has turned this into a 50 by 300 rectangle, and we'll talk about something that's very interesting, that with the work of Plato, who's another significant contributor to this Great Riddle. But Moses has reconstructed Noah's Ark as a 50 by 300 rectangle, and then he has built his temple as a cube. So the most holy space is the cube, and then there's a doubled cube, then there's a courtyard outside the cubes, and there's the 7 golden lampstands in there, and there's the Ark of the Covenant, which is 2.5 by 1.5 rectangle by 1.5. So I like to think of it as a 1.5 cube with a 0.5 cube on either side. So it's a cube, but then expands with 2/3 on the ends of it. And we also have a reference to the 666, another reference in Moses' temple. And that's that it's described as a edge equals 10 cube, the most holy space, 10 cubits. But then it's made with 8 panels, and each of those panels is 1.5 wide. So that clearly suggests, I've not heard anyone else that, but 8 panels at 1.5 makes 12. So there's some suggestion that the outside of Moses' cube is 12. And then if you divide the 10, so we got the walls are 1 thick. If we divide the 10 that you can see on the wall, as you say you're the high priest, and you open the curtain, and you're looking at the wall behind the ark. There's the Ark of the Covenant there. And on the wall, you're looking at 6.66 panels, vertical panels of the inside the 10. 10 divided by 1.5, 6.66. And so you've got this 12, and the idea, again, we're talking about this doubling with the 12. So there's doubling, the significance of this doubling sequence with this 3.5 years of the apocalypse. So the courtyard is 50 wide. So if you've got a 12, you double it and you double it, you get to 48. And so if the courtyard wall is 1 thick as well, then you've got that's the double twice. And if the Ark of the Covenant is 1.5, then you double it, you double it, you double it, and you get to the 12. So you get this sort of coded references to these things we're calling the Great Riddle here. And then the 12 tribes of Israel camped around it. There's the individual families around it, then there's the 12 of them camped around the outside. We're drawing some kind of picture here of Great Riddle. What does it all mean? But anyway, I suggested I was going to talk something about Plato. So Plato has come up with this thing called the nuptial, the number of the bride, the nuptial number. There's a perfect number that belongs to a perfect being, but then people have a number that is then called a geometric nuptial number. So a very famous passage in in the Republic. And this one, he talks about this number, there's a 3 and a 4, making a Basal 12, also related to the number 5. So then you see these 3s, the 4s and the 5s that have come up a lot in our discussion. So is he making a number? So what with the number, like we looked at with, let's say this one here, we're looking at a three-dimensional shape here. It's called an icosahedron with 20 faces and 12 vertices. But what we're saying is this is just a reflection of a six-dimensional reality. And so in the same way with Plato, Plato is building a geometric space, and a geometric space that also contains time, growth and decay. And the number that he's referring to is not a number like we know it, but it's a number that is reflective of a deeper, more encompassing and invisible to human eyes, multi-dimensional space. And so it says there's the 3 and the 4 making a base 12, and they're related to the 5. So again, we get the 5th, the 5 and the 12 related to the 60, and we also get the 12, and then he says, and then there is a factor squared times 100. So there's many answers out there to what Plato's number might be, but I think 14,400 is a pretty good guess, because if we take that factor to be 12, the factor that's squared, then we multiply it by 100, we get 14,400, being the same floor area as Utnapishtim and Moses' redesign of Noah's Ark. And then he says there's 2 harmonics that come to the same conclusion. And one of them is made by this squaring this number, and the other one relates to an oblong shape. And so these things are the same but different, and there's oblong, so people don't know what this number means, so there's multiple different translations out there, so it's a bit pick and choose for what sort of numbers you're using. But with the oblong shape, then he says there's the diagonal, the rational and irrational diagonals of 5 reduced by 1 and by 2. So if you got 5, if you got a square that's 5 on the edge, then the diagonal is equal to the square root of 50. So we've mentioned 50 a couple of times, the width of the courtyard in Moses' temple, and also the width of Noah's Ark that Moses changed. So that 50, you reduce it by 1, you get 49. So by the rational diagonal, rather than the square root of 50 is an irrational number, the square root of 49, you reduce it by 1, you get the rational number 7. But then you reduce it by 2, you get to the number 48, which is again in that doubling sequence, and which, as we suggested, is if the walls are 1 thick on Moses' courtyard and on his reconstruction of Noah's Ark, you get the number 48. So they're reducing it by 1 and 2 with the oblong shape. It's like Moses has been onto something with this second harmonic for how this number is manifested. And so with this, the Plato again, so he's got this thing that's got the oblong shape with factors that are the same but different, and there's the rational and irrational diagonals of 5, and then he says the other part of it is that it's cubes of 300. So this is the Noah's Ark that Moses designed is 300 long. So, and another from Plato, we've also got the classic. He just invented this story about Atlantis. And so I'll show you this one. It's Atlantis here. It's massive. Sorry, it's here somewhere. Maybe that's not it. Better put my glasses on. Republic notes. Oh, that's the wrong book. He wrote this book, Timaeus and Critias, where he's looking at some kind of geometric cosmology, and then he's put in the story of Atlantis, which he apparently heard from some priest out of his grandfather told him the story about a priest from Egypt or something. He just invented it. But he's presumably in his massive library, he may have had a copy of, whether he had a copy of the some Mesopotamian literature, which was presumably destroyed by then, or he probably had a copy of the Torah or something. But anyway, I don't know where he came up with these ideas from. Just invented them himself or what. This is the city of Atlantis, and it looks very similar to Moses' menorah with the 7 lampstands here. There's 3 polar pairs and 1 through the middle. And then he's laid out this, this is like the area of Atlantis here. It's a rectangle. This is 3,000 by 2,000, done up with a grid with all these canals. It's a geometry riddle. And then through the rest of this book, there's all this talk about geometry here. There's the Platonic solids. They're named after this guy. He was geometry mad. So we've got this great riddle. We had the Mesopotamians. There was Ziusudra, Utnapishtim, Atrahasis, Noah. Then there was Abraham, came out of the next town from Gilgamesh. Well, there was Gilgamesh, then there was Atrahasis, or the author of the Gilgamesh epic, anyway, was a stunning author. That is a book that everybody should read. And then there was Abraham, who gave us the Sefer Yetzirah with that geometric cosmology. And then there was Moses sometime later with the 7 days of creation and the temple design, the reconstruction of the story of Noah. There was Ezekiel, Daniel in about 600 years before Jesus. And then there was the Revelation. So what happened with the Revelation? The story is that some people say that Jesus' best friend amongst the 12 apostles, John, was the author. But I think the more credible story is that it was written by a character known as John the Divine, like 100 years later. And so Jesus has come back from the dead in this dream vision and given John this incredible story with all this, for you who know the word Kabbalah and have looked through that lens and think that Ezekiel is interesting or Moses is interesting, give the Revelation a go. That book is bizarre and incredible. And then, we skipped out Plato. Plato was like 300 years before Jesus or something like that. And then what else have we got? Oh, and then with that great crossover from the East, we got the polarity and of the Yi Ching. Confucius, about 2,600 again, did the last major edit, but the book is much older than that, based on yin yang and balance. So where are we up to? Yeah, this is one more thing. So I've done quite a few studies in over the years with this work, this Great Riddle, in geometry and number theory and just trying to figure it all out through these texts and how to shine light on these incredible texts. And one thing that there is this number, this is a bit of novelty, this discovery that I've made. There's this number 137, and again Kabbalah, the number, the what's it even called when you're gematria, looking at the old Hebrew tradition of having numerical values, numerology associated with numbers, that is obviously built in through the Torah example. For example, these coded messages associated with the numerical value of numbers. So one significant number is the number 137. And I was talking to a fellow because I'd been doing some studies in geometry and stuff and in number theory, and he said, "Oh, look at the number 137, 137." And there's another interesting parallel. It's sort of caught the popular imagination a bit because 1 divided by 137 is very close to something called the fine structure constant, which relates to the way that photons exist. I'm not describing it very well. It relates to the way that the structure of particles and how the photons are emitted, and it's a constant in the fine structure constant is a number approximately equal to 0.00729, and 1 divided by 137 is also equal to 0.00729. So the Kabbalists went a bit silly saying, "Oh, look, it's real, but the fine structure constant is obviously not exactly 1 divided by 137, but it's very close. We've just gone to 1 part in 100,000 or something like that different." So anyway, I looked at the number 137 using my strange methods, and I immediately discovered a set of 136 numbers that exist in 17 sets. And it's funny because for me, this is a massive discovery in physics here. We're just waiting to be figured out with this one. But so if you pick any number in this set and you multiply it by 2, for example, you end up with the number in this set. We're using this thing called mod 137. So once you get to 138, you're back to 1 again. If you're on 139, you're on 2. So 2 times 41 is 82, and it'll be in here somewhere. 2 times 100 is 200. That will be 63. There's 63. So if you multiply it by any number by 7, then where's the number 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You've gone up 6. And so then you multiply the number 7 here by 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You got 49. So you can multiply any number by any other number, and you end up in a predictable pattern. So it's like this. I've drawn some of them here. I got a bit carried away. And this 1 goes to 2, goes to, on the third set here, sorry, this 1 goes to 2 on the second set. I've actually changed the numbering system since I drew that. This is set 17, is like the master set, because it's got the decimal on it. If you multiply anything by 10, it stays in the same place. But if you multiply double things, you go forward 1. If you multiply things by 5, 5 goes to 25, goes to 125, you go up 1. If you multiply things by 3, you go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you multiply, so this red one is multiplying by 5. See this vortex coming up through the middle here? And this sort of wave form here down through here. Vortex coming up through the middle. And when we're doubling, this is the doubling one in black. Comes down through here, makes this little area in the middle here. And the outside area and dribbles forward, and they make different shapes. So you can multiply any number by any number, and it looks to me that this is very close to being a map of the universe, because the number, what you're looking at is a resonant frequency with things that are very far away. So if you've got, for example, if you're doubling the distance, or let's say doubling the speed, to go from this point to this point, you're going twice as fast. To go from here to here, you're still close, but you're going twice as fast to get there. You're going twice as fast to get to 4 to 8, but you're only going just as far here. So this little distance here is the same. There's somewhere here that is resonant with something that's further away. So that one thing that I believe we want to build as part of this journey of this multi-dimensional wave pool, we want to actually build the wave pool. And we build a small one, and we map it on here, and then it's resonant with out there. So there's a fascinating thing about it. So we're multiplying anything by anything else, and we end up with these patterns. The doubling, you go through, there's like 2 patterns. You go through 2 sets, and then you come back out at the start again. And then you've got the mirrored pattern on the other side. You go through the shape twice, and you come back to the start. And then you triple, you go every 5th one. I can't remember, some of them you've got one pattern that goes through multiple times and comes back out. Some of them you've got paired patterns, multiply, and they're all the same. So if you multiply anything by 22, it's the same as multiplying it by 8. If you multiply anything by 57, it's the same as multiplying it by 8. So you get those multiples, and then when you square it, you square things. This is classic, don't look at that bit. But this one here, when you square things here, 2 squares to 4, 4 squares to 16, 16 ends up at 119, and it goes through this goes 1, this goes 2, this goes 4, then we go 8, then we go back to move 16, we go on back to here, then we move 32, we go back to here, because we're cycling through, right? But so because anything on this decimal here contains the number 1, so anything on this decimal system, we're talking again about Moses' temple, where the 10 and the 12, we're talking about the 10 related to the 12 and the 5 with the 10 rods in the 120 arc. The decimal here cancels out because everything stays still, but everything else moves in this doubling pattern. Dunk, 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 doubles. From here we've just moved 8, and then we've moved 16, so we've effectively gone 1 back because we cycle around. And then when we move 32, we've gone 2 back. And when we move 64, we've gone 4 back. And we're going through this doubling pattern. And there's these master numbers that are being circled. So some of them are, there's 32 numbers that are 3 steps away from the master number, 16 numbers that are 2 steps away, 8 numbers that are 1 step away. And so you get 64. So 136 numbers minus 8 gives us 128, which is 2 times 64. And so the orange one has got 64. The green one's got 64. You've got 2 different doubling patterns, both of which contain 64th element that goes in halves, quarters, eighths. Here we have a geometric house for multi-dimensional space, in my opinion, but this is a new discovery. And here when you cube things, this is a classic, you can multiply anything by itself any number of times and you end up with a pattern to it, the way you move. So if you multiply something to the power of 7, then this is the set we're ending up on. I haven't got the computational power to tell you the exact number we land on, but I can tell you which set we land on. And if we multiply it by 7, we go from set 1 to set 7, it goes to 15. There's a geometric progression to all of it. And again, we got, if we square things, we got two sets, 2 patterns of 8 numbers. And there's Yeah, well, that we just looked at. If we're multiplying things, cubing things, might be on the page behind. Yeah, if we're cubing things, we go from 1 to the 3, goes to the 9. We're tripling the. Sorry, can't see. I'm going to make another video about this anyway. Anyway, so yeah, there's this strange dream that I've had. Shocking that I'd announced myself as a prophet and for the world president, and then I had this weird dream from Jesus where he suggested that I was the Messiah. It's freaky crap. Anyway, so just talking about that a bit more. So there's you can look at 3 things that the Messiah is supposed to do in the world, and one of them is to usher in the great society, the great global peace. So we got the end of prehistory, we can call it Judgment Day. We got the advent of a great and peaceful global society. And we got the second one is to bring the one religion. And we got the third one is to shine light on the mysteries of the scriptures. So with the first two, the one religion, we've got the middle way, the golden mean. Here's some of my literature. This one here is the Confucio Multidorm Hyperfantastico. There's another video about that up there. Religion, the one religion with many names and no set form. It's found in the middle way. It's about doing our best. It's got it doesn't belong to anyone to the exclusion of anyone else. It doesn't matter if any person who says they believe in God. God isn't defined by their words. Someone who says they don't believe in God is just as likely to actually know some truth as someone who says they do believe in God. Can't distinguish between them. The religion is found in the way that we try to live our lives. And with this polar cosmology, left and right, separate and connected. We're strong, we're gentle. And if we're both strong and we're gentle at the same time, then they help one another. So we can be both very strong and very gentle together, and they both help one another. But if we're too strong or too gentle, we get negative outcomes. We got cooperation and competition. They help one another. Central government, decentralised, local political autonomy, they help one another. Freedom and social cohesion. And likewise, in this frame, we can construct an ideal global society, the framework for how we understand an ideal society as a balance between polar extremes. So we got the one religion, we got the ushering in of a great global society. So we had this. This is one of my campaign posters, me for the world presidency. So anyway, all of this is based on my polar method, which came to me in my first vision as a teenager. And then the third thing is the shining light on the mysteries of the ancient scriptures. In this case, one of the things that the Messiah is supposed to be able to do, presumably also via bringing in the widely supported one religion, gaining support for that concept amongst people to the point that the Messiah is able to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. So that's one vast project that I personally would love to get my teeth into, although I'm not sure I know the mysteries well enough for that project just yet, but we're pushing on it. So we got those 3 things. So anyway, that's what I do for a job. Just a normal guy. I just happen to be claimed to be the Messiah. So not finished the video yet. This might be the finish of it. So with the idea of being the Messiah, I've also made this little poster here. I've been a bit late getting it organised. running for the senator to represent Queensland in the Australian Parliament in the Senate. And Gilbo is my stage name, so I can come up with all sorts of apparently ludicrous, fantastical stuff. And this here, World President, Prophet, Messiah, Queensland Senator, Gilbert Holmes, that's me. It's me talking to my hand. The dialogic process. Even if we think exactly the same, we still have to go through a dialogic process in order to understand one another. Socrates was a bomb. Okay, that's it. Have a great day.